Hey guys, and welcome to the very first episode of the For the Future podcast for 2023. In this episode, I go through some of my favorite clips and interesting moments from the first 10 episodes that I released last year. Thank you so much to you guys for all of your support this past year, and I really can't wait to see what this podcast brings for us. Thanks, and hope you enjoy. What do you think are specifically the kind of challenges that an entrepreneur might face in South Africa? Particularly that's different from a place like America, because I know a lot of the time we hear stories about like success stories in America, but it's quite far from South Africa. So what do you think are some specific challenges that entrepreneurs can sort of prepare themselves for?
I think obviously the captive market. So I think entrepreneurs have to keep in mind who they're targeting, and it depends sort of on your business and your product that you're offering to market. Who your target market's going to be. Obviously, you can still be very successful with a limited target market, but obviously you have to have a larger scale in terms of the amount of people that you can offer your product to, and obviously your price point has to be correct. So I think that's important to take into consideration. There are obviously things that the South African entrepreneur also has to face that many entrepreneurs around the world don't have to face. The obvious ones are things like electricity, which seems like it should be it's obviously a necessity for a business like ours, but it's something that greatly affects us, and we've obviously had to make large investments to ensure that we can still manufacture our product and that we can still operate on our stores when there are electrical issues. Funding and then banks are another challenging one. In a lot of places in the world, funding is very easily accessible. There's money being thrown around for small businesses. People are interested. I think in the current South African climate of the past decade or so, I think we've been in tough times, and I think specifically in the last 2 years, it's been specifically difficult. And if a small business is looking for finance, whether it be from banks or private investors, it can be quite a challenging journey.
So I've seen on YouTube that there is a video in which you speak about this concept of the feminist economy. And even within that video, you also spoke about the importance of highlighting marginalized groups and particularly the Black working class women when looking at economic issues in South Africa. So could you just explain in a little bit more detail what the idea of the feminist economy is?
So a feminist economy is essentially an economy that, as I said earlier, that actually that centers the most marginalized, centers particularly women, right? Black working class women, that speaks to the Black working class women. So part of the reason why there has been protest against austerity measures is because austerity measures actually affect in very practical and literal ways Black women who are working class and actually are rural staying, township staying Black women in this country, right? Yeah. But not only in this country, but like across the board. We've seen cases of austerity measures and how they've impacted certain countries, right? But in the context of South Africa, for instance, if you implement austerity measures, what you're saying is that you're essentially cutting off essential social rights, yeah. Right? Electricity, running water, and infrastructure development, and all of that. What that actually means is that once infrastructure development in particular is implicated, and Black women in the rural area can't necessarily access water easily, much of the domestic work, remember, is performed in care work, what we call care work, yeah. Is performed by Black women, right? And so that navigation of getting electricity or like fire, and it might sound a bit ancient, but it's still happening, right? Yeah. When we see that there are places that don't have electricity, there are places that don't have running water, tap water, There are places where schools are far away, where healthcare is far away from residential places. And in that, when someone in the household is sick, the first person who's going to take care of that person is a Black woman. When there's a necessity for food to be made, the first person who's going to be doing that is a Black woman. So if there isn't any electricity and there isn't any water, the person that needs to make plans to make sure that those things are there is a Black woman. And so a Black woman's time is consumed by the domestic and the domestic sphere, which is okay. But then it becomes unfair, right, if all your time is consumed by the domestic, because then there are other things that are happening in the world, in the public, that Black women need to be engaged with, right? And so that's how also Black women get to be, excluded from really important political, socio-political, and economic decisions that are happening in the country. Because what that policy, or how our policies are structured in a way that limits Black women in being part of very important decision making, in being part of very important spaces, right? And so we have to be careful and very critical of some of these things, and actually make those linkages even outside of the fiscal policy. Look at other policies that actually that inform the society and how those implicate the lives of the most marginalized in society.
Then I think another time was when I was doing I think it was like a machine learning course or some programming course that I was doing, and I was like, well, I started to realize that I learned about, like, and I mean, for all the developers, I'm like really bad at what I'm going to say now. This is just apologize if I'm butchering the coding language, but I mean, I literally learned that you got all these loops and while loops and if statements and all those kind of stuff, and it's like, if this happens, then that must happen, and if this happens after 7 times and do that, then I started to think, actually, the game is not like super rigged, man. There's some stuff that you can do. So certain actions happen based on certain outcomes, man. So I can't like expect, we're gonna be successful if the outcome was not met. So I'm like sitting at my house complaining, oh, no one's giving me opportunity, but I'm not like doing anything. I'm not waking up. I'm not reading. I'm not involved in society. I'm not talking to users. I'm not doing that stuff, man. So for me to achieve a certain action is a certain criteria that must be met. And I was like, this makes absolute sense in life. We're sitting there going, and I always tell people, like, you say, oh, there's no jobs, for example. But let's say the government decides, we're going to make available 10,000 jobs tomorrow, but all of them are in coding. Can you get that job, man? We're like, 10,000 jobs that none of us can get. So the issue is not that there's no jobs. It's sometimes like you yourself are not skilled. So there's a criteria that must be met for you to get a certain outcome. I want to be employed. Am I actually employable? Or do I just wake up and go, everybody's getting this job? And it's like, oh, everybody, my friends are now but like, what skills do they have? People are like, no, but I have matric. And I'm like, come on. Because and then there's another statement. I started to realize when I did a lot of these courses that sometimes people just set criteria so they have to interview less people. It's like, well, we got 10,000 applications. You know what? Okay, you must have matric. Damn, we got like 5,000 applicants. Now it's like, oh, actually, you must know computers. Damn, now we only got 2,000. In addition to that, you must have 1 year experience. Now the list is like 500. And you must have a driver's license. Now we got like 10 people that we need to interview. So now they're like, we just shortlisted everything. And I think that's like when I started to realize that, well, actually, you're putting yourself to a disadvantage by thinking whatever you're doing is enough. You need to do more. It's not just about, oh, I did matric or I studied or whatever. There's people with degrees that can't find work because they don't have like experience or vice versa. So it's like, what are you going to do to make yourself so different that, they almost can't say no. So I developed this attitude that, this is before I started like pushing entrepreneurship and stuff. I was just doing courses and I'm like, my aim, no one must touch my CV when I leave here. No one. I must leave this place and go, oh yeah, I got project management, I got events management, I got like app development, all this kind of different stuff. So when someone looks at my CV, they're going to be like, oh, like, I don't think we can afford you. That must be your aim, your mindset. You got, and it's like, and another thing I realized that people always say that they don't have skills and they don't have opportunities, but you got so much time. And like for me, it's like if you're unemployed, no, that's the greatest advantage you have. And it sounds like something that it's counterintuitive, but it's like you got so much free time. I mean, how long does it take someone to read a book? Let's say a book takes like 5 hours to read, end to end, or 8 hours. I mean, it takes me a month to read a book. I don't know, but like spaced out, you can knock off like 50 pages an hour or whatever it is. It's like 300 pages. You can get that done in a day because you don't have anything else to do. You got so much time. You got time to volunteer. You got time to read. You got time to learn. You got time to do online courses. It's like we sometimes cut young people a lot of slack. Because like, oh, shame, I feel sorry for them. Oh, now it's like their first job. Oh, no, there's this circumstance. Oh, there's their background. And I'm like, no, man. Especially if you're from my area. You're not going to live like down the road from me and say, oh, Ellen, I've been through so much. I'm like, no, man, tell me your sad story. I'll tick all that same boxes. But you must not decide. So for me, it was like, if you have time, what are you doing with your time? Don't tell me, oh, you don't have time to read a book and you finished you bragging to me, you finished the season of like, I don't know, the Kardashians. I don't know what's popular now. I'm not into it. But anyway, you're telling me, I was binge watching the series on Netflix. And I'm like, you're not serious about finding work. Then another last eureka moment, I realized like, if you're not, there could be a million opportunities. Again, if you're not ready for it. And I always tell people that are unemployed, they say that they're wanting to find work. And I'm like, but what do you do? Do you get out of bed and get dressed? And I'm like, no, they sleep till like 11 o'clock, walk around in the gowns the whole day. And it's literally like, you say you want to find what if I phone you now at 8 o'clock and I'm like, yo, there's an interview now. Your response to me is, yo, give me some time. I must still get out of bed. I must still go wash quickly. I must get dressed. You're not ready for an opportunity. And I keep saying that, no? And I'm not even going to lie. A few times that's happened where I'm like, wow. Where literally the homie's like, they're looking for this man. They're like, you have an interview now at 11. And the guy's like, oh, you can't find him. He's still getting dressed. He's going to make his way. And I'm like, you say to us, you're looking for opportunity. We hook this thing up. You live, and the worst is sometimes you live close by. I mean, you live like in the area. You live like one taxi away. But now you still must get dressed. You must still find your clothes. You must still brush your teeth. All that stuff. So get up in the morning, man. Even if you have nowhere to go, get up and just get dressed because then you're ready. And it's not even the one time. Even someone I know, they have a business and they were expecting clients and they were like, oh, I didn't see any bookings for the day. And I'm like, no, but just get dressed, be ready. And I kid you not, the client shows up. And then it's like, oh, this person is not ready. This person is still like in bed. But it's like, we can smooth talk the situation and the clients can understand. But it's like, if you were just awake and fully dressed, man, you could have sorted the whole situation out. People can walk in. You don't have to like rush to the space. You can just be like, I'm a bit late, but I'm on my way. Now you're still a bit late. You must get dressed. You must wash. You must pretend to not be asleep. So for me, it's like, be ready for an opportunity, man. When I was like, yo, I'm not ready. Sorry, I'm taking a bit too much time. I'll say one more thing on this. But also, a eureka moment for me is I was once at an event because I'm starting to like have to do like pitches and stuff and like tell people about Zlato. And so the reason I started the intro with "Look, I'm from Mitchell's Plain" is because I get there and people look at me. They go, "Yo, there's a colored guy." They assume like my area. There's a lot of like prejudices that come with that. They assume, So I start off with saying, "Yeah, I'm from this area, but I don't stare at people." And then it's like, oh, so now there's like a joke, and people are like, oh, this guy. So I'm like, I embrace. But you certain people you can see they're like, they're not sure if they must laugh, man. They're not sure. It's like, oh, this guy's saying that, but also I didn't know where we stand. He's joking. It's like, it's okay to laugh. Yeah. But I start out with the stereotype. I'm like, yo, this is where I'm from. This is how it is. So let's get that out of the way. Yeah, I'm a colored guy from Mitchell's Plain. So this is your stereotype. But now I address it. Then I proceed to just speak the way I speak. And I know sometimes people do like this whole code switching thing. And I mean, so the way I'm speaking to you is very different to when I'm like speaking to my funders, because then it's like there's no slang. But it's like sometimes you're gonna have to switch up depending on where you are. And I sometimes learn that I can say things like, yo, in the scheme we do this. But if I'm talking to a funder, they don't know what the scheme is. They don't that's not so I need to like switch up. And sometimes I had to learn that certain people you can speak because they understand, and people you speak comfortable, feel comfortable to speak a certain way. And sometimes you get out people that goes, no, this is just who I am everywhere. It's just me all the time. And it's like, if they to land the sale, you're telling me you can't like leave out slang. I don't have to like say my bro in every sentence. if you're trying to land a deal, can't you just say sir instead of bro today, man? Like, is that like really hard to do? So sometimes you have to be authentic, but also know when to toe the line, man. Because yeah, you just it's just like a balance that you have to do. But when you speak to your people, then speak to your people, man. Because sometimes we so lost in like and we experience it even in our team. Sometimes you're now so far removed from the problem that you forget what you're solving, man. Now it's like the office is like in town, in the main spot, and you're like, oh, my people, I'm trying to help them, but you're no longer in the community. So I keep telling my team the biggest advantage that we have is we actually areas that we're playing. So go to the same malls you've been shopping at, go to do the same stuff you've been doing, because you must actually speak to the same people. Now your circle changes, your everything changes, and then now you in the same. You might as well not be from the area. So like, if you're from the Kasi, be from the Kasi. If you're from the scheme, be from the scheme. You just switch it up when we're talking to the funders. But like, understand that this is what we're about, man. So for me, it's like the minute you lose track of that, then things start to go downhill.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I can imagine that, especially starting at such a young age, and in Africa and in South Africa, there has been a lot of stigma surrounding HIV. So I imagine that it must have been a very challenging journey for you. With that's definitely had some backlash. So what would you say have been some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in your activism and in sharing your story?
I think a lot of the challenges that I have had to encounter in my journey, all of them were honestly internal. It was just how I viewed myself, because I really received the utmost support from people from my community. But I think just me having to reconcile my mind with the fact that I keep telling people that we are greater than HIV, but do I feel greater than HIV? And I also had to like educate myself that when you start sharing such stories about yourself, people will call you strong, they'll call you courageous, they'll call you brave, and you don't feel brave every day. You are human. And I've had to reconcile my mind to that fact that even on the days you are at your lowest, you are still a brave person, you are still courageous, right? You don't have to hide the low days. You don't have to now pretend to be this happy person when you're not, just because you're trying to sell this facade to people. It's important that you just you become honest in your journey to be able to say, this is who I am, and sometimes I have bad days. Sometimes I don't want to talk to anyone online. Sometimes I want to ignore everyone, but on most days I want to talk to everyone. So it's just important that we become honest in our journeys. I think from like social media, a lot of people were just saying that I was lying. I'm lying that I'm living with HIV. I'm like, guys, do I look bored? And they were saying things like, yeah, I get paid to lie to people online. I'm like, guys, where's the money? Where's the money then? So it was just those things where it was like, yeah, no, this one is just lying to us.
Wow. So, I mean, other than the lying thing, you actually found that a lot of the positive comments were a bit of a challenge for you, because it kind of like created a disconnect between the way you were being described and how you felt day to day. That's actually that's quite interesting. I never thought that that kind of thing would be a challenge for school children. So how do you think that creative writing and public speaking as well are important skills for young people, or why do you think that?
Okay, that's really a good question. Like I've told you, to be honest, it was like I wanted to study about environment at first place. I didn't want to study about climate change and everything. I want to study biology. I want to study biology, means animal biology, vegetable biology, microbiology, etc. But I found myself after that between two choices. Either I continue to study biotechnology or environmental sciences. So I choose the environmental sciences because I found it like really passionate and it was really important for me. I like enjoyed studying it. I was learning new things every day. So that's a good question actually. Why did I pursue a master degree in environmental engineering? After studying 3 years and taking a major in waste management, like I believe in my final year project. My final year project, I worked on something. Maybe it's the best thing I've did or worked in my entire life. I've worked on creating the first focaccia in Tunisia. What is a focaccia? It is a net, a special net called the Rachel mesh, that is capable of catching fog and turn it into drinkable water. After the analysis I've made, the water turned out to be drinkable. So I've worked on that, and as I told you, a lot of people in Tunisia are suffering, like in Qayrawan, in Tela, in Gasreen, and in, like internal regions or rural areas where they are drinking from a whale till now, a polluted whale till now. Well, they are drinking also like polluted water, and every 6 seconds a children is dead or die because of polluted water. You know of that. So yeah, I've worked on that, and if I didn't study environmental sciences or I didn't study environment protection at first place, I wouldn't be capable to work on that. I wouldn't even be capable to join climate movements, maybe. So if like we want right now to stop climate change or to fight climate change, we need scientists. We need a new industrial revolution that is empowered by millions of sustainable inventions. We will all share in the benefits of these inventions. Who is gonna make the inventions? Gonna be the scientists, the youth scientists that they are studying right now, environmental engineering, or they are studying, I don't know, they are studying water engineering, or they are studying soil engineering, they are studying geology, they are studying like all these. They are studying IT, or they are studying robotics, they are studying aeronautics, like all these things. The youth gonna take the lead. The youngsters gonna take the lead. The students are gonna take the lead in this domain. We are gonna be the scientists of the future. So it is really important for like colleges, universities to open new branches, a new department to make the students to like integrate environmental education or environmental sciences into colleges, because how could we fight climate change if we do not have the weapon to fight it? What is the weapon to fight climate change? It is science. It is science. Definitely, it is science. In Europe or in the global north, I believe they do have like world-class universities where they are studying about climate change, about sea level rise, about everything that is related to climate change, environment, biodiversity, animal biology, everything. In Africa or in the global south, unfortunately, I believe we don't have that much of universities. We don't have that much of branches where the students get to study all this sort of things. Even in primary schools, I believe. I don't know. Let me ask you a question right now. Do you have in your country like environmental education since primary school? Exactly. Exactly. That's the same in Tunisia, and that's the same in Africa and Asia. Only like even them, like even the global north, the developed country, they only started like integrating climate and environmental education in primary schools. Like how could we fight climate change if the youngsters, if the future generations don't know what is climate change? How could we do that if you run out in the street right now and ask someone, what do you know about climate change? Unfortunately, they won't know a lot. And that's a problem. We cannot face something if we don't know what is it. And that's why it is really important for universities and for developing countries to come together and to cooperate and to find new strategies, a new way to integrate environmental sciences into universities, because scientists will be at the first lead to fight climate change. They will be the one to do sustainable clean energy. They will be the one to clean the air. They will be the one to create machines that recapture carbon and turn it into and recapture emissions. They'll be the one to create like sustainable materials for the renewable energy platforms. They'll be the one to to regenerate water and to clarify the air. They'll be the one to do that. So that's why I see that it is an essential step to study environmental sciences, or to study at least all of its components, water, earth, all of these things.
Well, confidence, first of all, 100%. I can literally get into any space and obviously read the room first, and I can engage quite critically. So I also think it helped the fact that I love to read different types of texts, so I'm able to have a worldview on things that seem to be far from me. You know what I mean? Because the book brings you closer. Confidence, yes, and the power of articulation. And also working in comms, PR and digital marketing, especially given the advent of the pandemic, assisted me greatly. I'm able to communicate using digital means. I'm able to communicate face-to-face. I'm able to communicate through my writing and through semantics and all of those things. So, and also I think it also helps that I'm not a monolingual speaker. I understand other languages as well, so in the country. So it assists. And I think what Nelson Mandela said, when he said, when you speak to a person in a language that they understand, you speak to their heads. When you speak to them in a language that's their own, you speak to their hearts. So, and that entails communication. It's an art. It really is an art, and I absolutely enjoy it a lot. So it assists me. Even I think with the Mail and Guardian, stuff like that, and pitching at the Donor's Den, needed me to do thorough research. It needed me to be in front of a camera. It needed me to understand how to utilize time. It needed me to, have a sort of persuasive appeal and approach, given the facts that I presented, and various other things as well. So yeah, I think it has assisted me in many, even in conflict resolution, because I do a lot of consultative work. And you find that you go to organizations that you've been having problems for years, and you find that the main problem here is not that you don't want to work with each other, it's just that you don't understand each other. Therefore, you need to communicate so that you can be able to understand each other. So there's many merits and fruits of this particular discipline for me that I've seen in my life.
You guys have been working in this organization for quite a while. So I wanted to find out what is one of your most positive memories or experiences in working in this organization?
Wow. Where do I start? I think firstly, just 4 people coming together and understanding and sharing a vision. I think that for me has always been something that I've valued quite a lot, because you find that it's not very easy for a whole bunch of people to work towards one goal over a long period of time. And it has been long. I mean, we started conversations around DACA in 2017. We registered the company in 2018. And all 4 of us have been laboring towards this goal that we believe in since then. And for me, I think that has been my biggest, or the thing I value the most from this journey, is really the fact that all 4 of us have been able to sort of get married to this vision and commit to work on it going forward. And then I think, of course, once our first grant was approved, that was definitely a highlight, because it's to show that, hey, this vision that we've been working on, because for a very long time it seemed like we were the only ones that kind of got it, especially when we were still pitching the first idea, because everyone just got so much money, like such a small company, it's a small startup. You don't have skills in this area. There was a lot of sort of stumbling blocks that people saw when we saw the sort of the end goal. And so for a very long time, it did seem like we were only seeing this vision alone, and we would do so for a very long time. So when we got our first grant funding from the Ellen Gray Orbis Foundation, shout out, we were very excited. And I think for me, it was also quite a pivotal moment, because it was, I want to say, almost an affirmation that we were on the right track, that what we're working on makes sense, and that what we're working on, there's value in it. And because, when you start something, you can quickly become attached to it. And so when people are telling you, or advising you, or trying to guide you, sometimes you may not necessarily heed to their guidance or hear when they say this is too far-fetched. So it could be that, one, you're really passionate and you stick into your guns, or two, you are just super attached to the idea because it's kind of like your baby now. You've been working on it for a very long time and you just don't want to let go, even though it doesn't make sense to still pursue it. And so when we got our first grant funding, definitely it was an affirmation that we are on the right track and we should carry on working towards this. And I think just every day then, just to wrap up, every day of us working towards this, for me, is once again, I think, a highlight, because like I said, we started in 2017 and it's 5 years later, and we're still passionate about what we want, and we are now crushing some of our goals that we've always had and getting in front of audiences that we've never had. And so it's just, things seem to be opening up, and I think it will forever be pivotal moments or important moments for me, or moments that stand out for me.
Outside of, trying to inspire people, African people, women, and so on to explore STEM fields, you've also mentioned in an interview that you think that having interviews with scientists is important to bridge the gap between scientists and the general public. Could you kind of explain more what you mean by that and why you think it's important to bridge that gap?
So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of the science and society, right? So as scientists, we are taught to communicate in a particular manner. We speak very technical jargon. We speak, things that mostly as scientists only we can understand, right? And sometimes I'll even go as far as saying that I do crop science. I am in science, but I won't actively go and read up about microbiology, because that's not my field. So that's what sort of happens with science. People talk sometimes amongst themselves, right? So there needs to be that ability for us to communicate with the people, because, as scientists, we're always trying to solve a societal issue. And I'll always bring it back to the pandemic, there was a lot of pandemonium and a lot of misinformation going around because of all that fake news of the vaccines and whatnot. So we needed to have scientists, the people who are actually doing the research, to communicate with the general public. And that's where science communication comes in. The ability where, in terms of science communication, you don't say you don't go and say, oh, these people can't understand, we speak very difficult. No, you don't look at the people who are not in science as they're too dumb to understand this. But you're able to communicate it in a manner that still keeps the facts, still keeps the important information, but in a manner that everybody can understand. I remember my one supervisor always used to say, talk to me about your project like how your grandmother can understand it, so that's how we need to be able to communicate. And that's what I want my podcast to do. I want to be able so that anybody listening can understand, anybody who's talking about microbiology or astronomy or I don't know, a lot of cardiovascular diseases. So I have that ability where I want people to educate us, because at the end of the day, I want somebody to take away something from listening to my show. And I think it's very, very important, because if people feel that they're able to be part of that research, to understand the research, they get more, there's more interest in it.
Absolutely.
So that's where I think that communication between scientists and society is very, very, very key.
You've mentioned before that you are really passionate about doing good in the continent, and you even mentioned now like being part of that value chain and also just helping young people learn. And so I wanted to ask, why do you think that it's so important for young people in Africa to explore learning, particularly in the STEM fields?
Okay, so Africa, it is a great question, by the way, but Africa is a rich continent, and it's rich in mineral resources as well as, in knowledge. And yet we still rely heavily on the West for solutions. I sincerely believe that Africa could be in the frontier of knowledge as well as wealth generation. If only our leaders could invest in training and upscaling young people to become global citizens and to participate in generating solutions for the continent. So yes, I mean, one can say this is a pipeline dream, but we're faced with a lot of challenges, like high unemployment rates as well as conflicts or wars between nations. But I still believe that young people in Africa have the opportunity to rewrite their own stories, to utilize every opportunity that comes their way, and also, to not only better themselves, but also the communities that they are part of in the process of empowering themselves. Yes, it sounds like a pipeline, a far-fetched dream at this point in time. But I promise you, amazing discoveries and inventions are happening in this continent, and these are driven by young people. So I believe that if STEM subjects are taught right, we can continue to develop critical and analytical skills in young people. And these can help produce the many techpreneurs, the social entrepreneurs, engineers, doctors, agriculturalists or agricultural economists, climatologists, etc., that the continent requires.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that it brought you tremendous value. If it did, please leave a rating for the podcast on whatever platform you use. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and follow us on social media at For The Future ZA. I would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast episode. Thank you so much, and have a good one.